Okay, well, it's time, so we'll start. Maybe some other people will come in, still be welcome. Um, I'm going to talk to you today about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's not about an old film. It's not a film review, of course. I'm going to talk to you about requirements. And some of you did attend the discussion, the previous discussion here on the round table. It was also a lot of talking about requirements. So I think requirements matter. Requirements matter for testers, because without requirements, how can we test? And that's something that I want to talk to you about, because in requirements, we have good requirements, we have bad requirements, we have ugly requirements, and I'll explain to you later. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Hans van Loenhoud. I come from the Netherlands, and I'm a trainer there for testing courses and requirements courses. And I also work for the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences. And that's relevant for you, because I think I learn a lot from my students, and their experience I can share with you. And also I'm a member of the International Requirements Engineering Board, so I can also benefit from ideas all over the world about requirements engineering. And that is really a start for this presentation. We all have requirements if we are working as testers in an IT team, in a development project. It starts with a client, and of course you know the client is the king. The client has an idea of something that he wants to have realized, because the client has a problem or a goal, or he wants something to improve within his business or whatever, and the client talks with the business analyst or something, or information analyst or product owner or whoever, about what he wants, or she wants, of course. And in the, well, maybe in the old-fashioned way, in the waterfall, it was the requirements engineer that documented it, and now in an agile situation, it's perhaps the product owner or the business analyst in a team, or whoever does it. Anyway, in one way or another, the requirements are documented in a blueprint. And maybe in an agile team, they are not documented, they're in between our eyes, our ears, but still, we as a team must know what we are supposed to build, what we are supposed to deliver. And then we have some development team who starts building things, and at the end, we are proud to deliver something to the customer. And in between, we have this tester who is trying to compare whatever were the requirements with the product that's being built. And if it agrees, we say test passed. If we don't agree, well, we say there should be some changes to the product. But anyway, requirements are important for us, for all parties in an IT development enterprise. And I'm going to talk to you about that based on my own experience with requirements. I'll first dive into the idea of ugly requirements, and I'll explain to you later what I mean by that. If we know what ugly requirements are, then we know what the saints are, the good requirements, how to produce them, then we will logically be able to derive the bad guys, and then the most important message, but that will be in the second part of my talk, is what do we do with it as testers? Because I guess all of you are kind of tester, and well, you are fed with bad requirements, and then you know, oops, bad requirement. What do I have to do with it? I'll show you some ways that I handle that, and maybe it can be useful for you. I first want to tell you a story about a project that I did in a big logistic company, a company that transfers parcels all over the world from one place to another place, and they have a big data center somewhere in the Middle East, no, in the Far East, and there all the transactions from all over the world are all received and they are dispatched within the company to do all this parcel movement. And we did there a nice project in replacing the system that received all this, these messages. A kind of portal, an entry portal for the whole company. And I had a role, something like a quality manager over there, but not actually. I was more a consultant trying to convince them to do more about quality, so I was not directly responsible, but I really was engaged in this project. And one thing about this product that we had to deliver was the response time, because you can imagine 10,000s of transactions coming in every day. Well, the response should be good enough, otherwise, well, if they don't receive it, they can't send a parcel. And we had a nice document. It was a functional design or whatever, and it specified the response, the desired response time. And it was 5 seconds. It was 5 seconds. It was signed by the CEO of the company, and everybody agreed. Response time, 5 seconds would be good. Me, I was a foreigner. It was the first time that I was in this company, so I had no domain knowledge. I thought 5 seconds looks quite long to me. And I asked, is this really correct, 5 seconds? Yes, they said the CEO has signed it, so it's correct. And well, we started developing this system, and everything went fine. And at a certain point of time, we were almost finished, 2 weeks before delivery. And then I said, let's take a look at the response times. And we measured it, and we actually were better than the original demand. We had a response time of 1 second. Well, I said, well done, we are 5 times as good as were asked, so our client will be very, very happy. And then something strange happened. Because one of our testers, a really smart girl, said, but what is the response time of the old system that we are replacing? I said, well, let's take a look at that. It was 0.2 seconds. So our new delivery, our new system, was 5 times as slow as the original product. Well, that's a little bit awkward. Let's go to the customer. And they said to the customer, well, we managed to improve our performance from what you asked, 5 seconds to 1 second, but still the old system that we're replacing is 5 times as fast. Do you mind? Well, the client, the CEO kind of exploded, of course. You can say, you are completely idiots. Giving me a new system that is 5 times as slow as the old system? Yeah, but you signed for the response time of 5 seconds. Yeah, well, I didn't know what it was, so 5 seconds seemed quite reasonable to me. But of course, you can't deliver a system that is 5 times as slow as the current system. Well, that was a challenge to us. In fact, it was impossible to have the new system, deliver a new system that has the same response time as the old one, because the new system did a lot more of checking and whatever things that new system do. So at the end, we managed to achieve half of a second, and they agreed. But what was really happening? We had inconsistency in our requirements. We had a formal written specification of 5 seconds, and we had an informal, not documented requirement. The new system should be at least as good as the old system. And they were inconsistent, but because this informal requirement was not documented, nobody knew about it. No tester, except this smart girl at the end. She was a little bit too late with it, but well, we didn't think about it. We said, we have 5 seconds, we do 1 second, so we're good. It wasn't that easy. So this is the first ugly requirement that I want to point out to you. Inconsistencies, hidden inconsistencies that you don't discover right away. And they're often in non-functional requirements, or in the conjunction between functional requirements and non-functional requirements. Or for instance, take the example for the requirement. The system must be user-friendly and the system must be very secure. They're almost always inconsistent with each other. And then you say, for instance, okay, we have face recognition, that's very secure and it's very friendly. But then I would say, well, if you kill me, I still have my face and you still can open my, my login screen. So I don't think that's very secure. Okay. Think about it. There's no solution at it, but you must know as a tester that that could be a problem. A next nice story. Where is the money? I once worked for an insurance company, and there was this bright new project leader, designer, whatever she was, and she just came from the university, and she was given a rather small project for a new insurance product to be introduced. Or well, it was not quite new, but it was a change, and we needed a new system for it. And she started developing the system and designing the system and working with the team, and everything went fine again. She was very good. And well, after some, well, I guess it was about 3 months, the system was delivered, it was put in production, and no problem, no bugs, whatever. But at the end of the month, then the accounting department started to complain and started to ask questions. Why don't we earn money with this new product? How do you mean we don't earn money? We've sold thousands of insurance policies on it. Yeah, but in our system we have nothing about it. We don't see it. Oh? How does this come? Well, then it proved that the new designer, she was new to the company, she didn't know the normal way of developing systems in this company. She thought, well, this about the money, well, it comes later on in the accounting process or something, I don't have to do with it. So she completely forgot to develop an interface between her system and the accounting system. So we sold policies, but it was not booked in the accounting system. Well, this caused us, forced us to bring down the new system, revive the old system, transfer all the new policies to the old system, writing letters to the customers saying that there was some delay in the payment, etc. It took us more than 3 months to get everything back on the road again. That's another ugly requirement. Forgetting about basic factors. And I want to point out, do you know this model? Who knows the model? Carolina, wake up. You know the model. Okay. It's the canoe model. I think we all should know the canoe model. Canoe is, I guess he's from Japan or something. He's a professor there in marketing. And he says there are the factors, the features of a system determine the satisfaction of the client. And there are quite a number of factors that have a straight relation between how good you implement them and how satisfied your customer is. It's normal thing that the client asks for, and if you put it in, they're satisfied. If you can't implement it, they're dissatisfied. And the more you put in, they're more satisfied. The less you put in, they're not satisfied. And there are things that Canoe calls delighters, or excitement factors. That are things that the customer doesn't even know that is possible. And if you don't put it in, well, nobody cares. And if you put it in, they're really, they say, wow, this is a good product. This is about innovation. But there's an ugly part. This is this one. These are things that your clients, your customers, your users think that are obvious. They don't mention it because they think, oh, it's so obvious, I don't even recall that I should discuss it. Like, for instance, this interface between the insurance policy system and the accountant system. And because they don't tell you, if it's in, nobody will say, well done, it's in. Nobody will say, nice, nice smartphone. I can even place phone calls with it. Of course, if I go to a shop and I say, I want to buy a smartphone, I won't say, I want to make phone calls with it. Because it's obvious. But if you forget it, because your clients will not tell it, they will be extremely satisfied. If I buy a nice smartphone and I can have all kinds of apps and I can do, well, I see the weather and I have a GPS, etc. But I can't place a phone call with it. Oh dear, I'll bring it back, surely. I throw it to the windows from anger. So this is another source of ugly requirements. Requirements that are so obvious for your customers that they don't mention it. And you can only find out by just observing your users doing their job and asking the question, why do you do that? You didn't tell me that you need this. Oh yes, but we always do it this way. So, other example of ugly requirements that are easily forgotten and cause big problems at the end. Another example, well, I have had, well, I'm a little bit older than most of you, so I had many failures in my projects in the past. And I want you to learn from my failures, then you don't have to make them yourself. I once did a social security project for the municipality of Rotterdam. Also a very nice, but very complicated project. Took us more than a year. Oh, it starts again. Oh, that's nice. It took us more than a year, and we had to overcome many challenges. But at the end, well, quite near the delivery date, but we were satisfied. And even our customer was satisfied. So we could go into production with this new system. It was due on the 1st of January, always a nice time to go into production. And it was, well, I guess it was mid-December or something. And then the manager of the steering committee, the president of the steering committee says, oh yes, by the way, just before you go into production, you have to ask permission to our audit department to put it into production. Because they have the last say on yes or no you can use this system, because, well, it was about paying money to people without unemployed people, etc. And, well, things can go wrong, etc. So the audit department had a say in it. So we went with the system to the audit department, said this is a new system, we've tested it, it works fine, and here are the proofs that we pay the right bills, etc. And I said, oh yeah, well, looks good. Well, you could go into production. Yes, yeah, looks really good. But by the way, how can we check the audit trail? What do you say, audit trail? What do you mean by audit trail? Well, we have to know exactly who entered these data in it and when it was passed and was it changed and oops. Well, it's not in. Oh, well, without audit trail you can't go into production, of course, because then we can't check anything. Well, they were kind people, so we got permission to go into production if we promised to add an audit trail in the first 3 months of production. Well, eventually it went fine, but it was a great problem, and well, of course we didn't plan for it, so we had to work extra, and we passed our budget. We already did pass our budget, so that was not a great problem in a municipality like the size of Rotterdam, but still we were not very happy. That's also an ugly requirement. When you forget a stakeholder, when you're not aware of a stakeholder that is important for your project, well, if you forget him, you won't get their requirements. And it will pop up at the end, either in production or in the last phases of acceptance testing, and you'll have a problem. The last example that I would give to you for ugly requirements is this one. I didn't. This was not my failure for myself, but I was once in a training at a truck manufacturing company, and they told me the story, and I really liked it because they had a very modern production plant, and they had this just-in-time delivery, and when the truck was on the conveyor belt and they had to put in all these parts, etc. Well, they should be collected from the warehouse just in time, and well, they had developed an app or a system with these mobile hand terminals, in which warehouse employees were collecting all this kind of stuff that should be put into the truck. And well, it was developed, it was tested, everything was okay, the warehouse people were happy, etc. And we went into production, and then many things went wrong in real production. And why was that? Because the light conditions in the warehouse were not the same as in our testing room. And people just couldn't really look and see what was on the hand terminal. Especially the colors were very difficult to see. And because many small parts were labeled in coral, they collected the wrong product, they put it incorrectly in the truck, and then the clients were complaining about something not working, etc. So that's also something that you should remember as a tester. Real life is the reference. Make sure that you understand the context of use. Don't expect your testing situation to be exactly the same as the eventual use of the product. And if you don't know exactly how the product will be used, in what situation, well, maybe you have a wonderful product that won't work at your customer side. Even if your customer at your side said it was a perfect system. So that's what I call ugly requirements. Ugly requirements are requirements that are relevant to your customer, but you don't detect them in testing, or you detect them very late in acceptance testing. And then you'll always have a problem, because you're close to your due date, and everybody is already standing in the mode well, we are going into production, and then you come with a message, oops, forgot something, we need 2 more months to repair it. Don't make much French with that. But you have it, because in production the same problem will arise. I think common causes are these 4 ones. First, the hidden inconsistencies, especially for non-functionals. Unmentioned basic factors. You really need domain knowledge to capture them. Forgotten stakeholders. It occurs much more than you would think. And not understanding the real context of use. And, well, this was announced as a presentation, but I want to turn it into a little bit more a workshop. So I would invite you to discuss in small groups with your colleagues here. Do you recognize this? Did you ever experience this? And what was the course? Did you find different things about it? Did you have other experiences? So I'll give you 10 minutes. It's over there. It counts down. And, well, go ahead. I'm here. Carolina will help you if you have questions. You may discuss in Russian, of course, but I won't understand it. So if you ask a question to me, you have to do it in English. I don't know. We have a translator over there who could help. Thank you very much. And go ahead. You still have 9 minutes. 4 or 5 or 10 or whatever. Yeah. Just talk to your neighbors about what.
С соседями объединитесь по четверкам, пятеркам и поговорите про ваш опыт. Как это было у вас?
Yeah, but then my counter is not working anymore. Oh, you spoiled my counter. Okay, let's stop the discussion. Now it. Yes. Okay. Let's. Yeah. Well, I really like to see you working because this is a kind of workshop, of course. Well, it was not for nothing. Let's see what our slide says. Share and win. I want one or two groups of you presenting here what you discussed. And I have this nice Dutch syrup wafels for the team that gives a nice presentation. So please proceed, come here and tell me your story.
Well, we discussed between 3 of us. So we identify the following items, maybe following examples. First of all, requirements were not consistent in the way they were consistent at first. But when they start to move to different development or testing groups, they become separated, they start to change, and we have the situation when functional testers have one requirements, load testers have second kind of requirements, and it was very bad in the end. First example. Second example, requirements were written in the way that were not accounting real life experience, user experience, because we have, for example, kind of form which user had to complete to fill, but it suddenly in the last time, as it was described in your presentation, this form was not complete enough. There were too many subdivisions in the one form, and they should mix up, confusing everybody, not the user, the whole system. It was also not good. Third example was that the form took more than 5 minutes to finish. Mm-hmm. It was a very heavy form with more than 5 pages, a lot of fields to fill, and suddenly on the last page you encounter that some kind of specific conditions that you need to go to the first page to change something there, and usually when you go back, you all fields are erased, and you should start again, and there is timer ticking with session time blocking you out from your attempt. You need to start again. Is it?
That's a non-functional about usability.
Yeah.
Well, applause. They deserve their. But I have a spare chance for another group. I brought more. So yeah, okay. Well, you share.
Okay. I believe our discussion was mainly about what happens when the requirements suddenly appear in the project. So we have some situation, we implement this situation, we develop something, and then something happens, and we learn that we need to do something more or something else or something completely contrary to what we have done. First, I believe that's the situation in my project, but my colleagues helped me to know that it's very, very often situation.
Well, it's something like incomplete requirements elicitation at the start, and then they pop up during the project, and you're surprised.
Maybe surprised, maybe shocked.
Well, same. It's
maybe
a bad
fired
surprise.
even.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I think in the program now says that we have a coffee break for 10 minutes, and you want to share? I don't have cookies for you, but.
Hello. Can I speak Russian?
Yeah, it will be translated.
Yes. Окей. У меня была такая проблема. Я работаю в компании «Ингострах», и мы разрабатываем личный кабинет для обычных людей. И заявка была такая: создайте, пожалуйста, записную книжку всех застрахованных людей, которые страхует наш пользователь, чтобы ему по 10 раз не надо было вводить имя, фамилия, там, отчество, да, всех. И это было от заказчика. Наш аналитик сделал так: чтобы исключить повторение, он попросил, чтобы всех людей застрахованных слепляли в одну, по регулярному выражению, в одну строку. Фамилия, дата рождения, месяц, день, месяц, год и пол. Тогда, исключаются все повторяющиеся люди. Потому что нужно было оценить все полисы, которые купили, и по ним сделать выборку. В итоге мы протестировали, нам все понравилось, отправили уже на верстку. Подрядчики делают красоту на сайте. Вот они уже получили от нас, что все хорошо. Как мы выясняем, что если двойня одного пола, то вроде как они друг друга исключают. То есть если у человека двойня, он на него заводит 2 полиса, они в один. Вот, неучтенный, пожалуйста, кейс такой вот у нас. И он уже появился после того, как мы отправили в продакшн. На что нам кастомер сказал, мы ему озвучили риск. Он сказал, и ладно, забьем на двойне. А я говорю, если тройни, забьем на тройне. Так он у нас и живет. Спасибо.
Тоже хочу поделиться прикольным маленьким кейсом у нас был. В общем, мы делаем игры, компания «Космос». В общем, у нас была акция на проекте. Акция такая, что она идет 2 дня всего лишь. Там она очень хорошо окупается. И суть в том, что эта акция важна для нас, как для компании. Она там какие-то дополнительные деньги дает. И запустили акцию на продакшн. Вроде все хорошо, протестировали, там вообще проблем никаких нет, но каждый раз при запуске там ежемесячно пишут одни и те же пользователи, у них не запускается. Что за фигня? Начали разбираться, мы все подняли, весь код перерыли, что за херня, не понимаем. И это произошло в какой-то момент, то есть там, ну, какой-то месяц, грубо говоря, началась такая вот ерунда. Ситуация была в следующем. Мы нашли пользователя, который все-таки смог это воспроизвести. Это был наш модератор в комьюнити. И он, ну, мы у него прямо на компьютере начали смотреть и не понимаем вообще, что за ерунда. Начали проверять, оказывается, какой-то программист просто взял, поменял немножко формулу расчета даты со смещением времени, то есть часовыми поясами. Просто элементарный вот кейс, который очень сложно было отловить, просто потому что не было. А в итоге решилось просто. Все тестировщики сразу часовой пояс себе там во время тестирования поменяли просто и сразу тестировали с неправильными, не с нашими часовыми поясами. Все. То есть пример такой простой проблемы, грубо говоря. Спасибо.
I hope to see you back in, well, now we only have 5 minutes. I'd like to continue our talk about good requirements, how to produce good requirements, because that's what really interesting for you. How would you make good requirements? And of course, you might be a business analyst to do so or something. But I think, as a tester, it's also very useful to know something about the processes that are the professional way of developing requirements. So everything about developing requirements, but there's a professional way, and by the way, that's the IREP way, because I'm a representative of IREP. Don't forget the commercial. Good. IREP, International Requirements Engineering Board, has described a fundamental requirements engineering process. And it says there are, in principle, 3 steps in which you develop requirements. The first step is called elicitation. Elicitation is getting the requirements out of your environment. The next one is documentation. In one way or another, you have to capture them, even if you're agile and you don't want to document things as few as possible, but still you have to capture them in one or another way. And the last step is validation. Prove that they are valid, prove that they are correct, check their quality. And this must be embedded in some kind of management of these requirements, because this is a growing set of requirements, and if you just let it go by itself, things will go wrong. Let's have a look. Elicitation. These requirements, they are hidden, they are under the surface, and you have to pull them out. They don't come by themselves, you have to pull them out of the environment, and that's what we call elicitation. And the first step in elicitation is going to find the sources of requirements. Where do we have to look for requirements? And by the way, this is again something that is for you as a tester really relevant, because the sources of requirements are also your sources to derive your test cases. And in principle, the most important source is the user, the end user, the customer, the stakeholder, whatever. And you can go and talk with them. But there are other sources. First, other source is other systems that the system that you're developing is having to interface with. And another source can be found in documentation. And documentation can be about this other system, but it also could be legislation or industry standards or procedures within the company that you're working for, etc. So these are all sources that you must identify at first before you start looking for the requirements. And I think, in my personal opinion, that you as a tester need to know these sources as well. If you identify the sources, you'll apply techniques to get these requirements out of these sources. Because, as I said, they don't pop up by themselves. You have to do something for it. And we have three core techniques. The first one is what we call survey techniques or questioning techniques. Just go out and ask. But there are different ways to do it. You could have interviews, you could have questionnaires. We have a technique that is called contextual inquiry, etc. So, first of all, you have to know how to approach these sources. We have observation. Just go to your users and look what they are doing. And observation is especially useful to find these basic requirements that they don't tell you. You just go there and see what they are doing, and then maybe it gives you a trigger to ask them other questions. That will reveal your their requirements. And the last one is creativity techniques. Creativity techniques are techniques that you can use to find these wow factors, these delighters. Because delighters are things that your customers will never ask because they don't know it's possible. So you'll use brainstorming workshops, etc., or the six thinking heads approach, or analogy techniques, or whatever. There are quite a few techniques that help you to invent new requirements that are not yet there, but that you as a team think that will delight your customers. Design thinking is also an approach to find these requirements with these techniques. Then if you have captured these requirements, you've finished your elicitation, and of course it's not a sequential process, because well, you don't first get them and then document them, but you document them during the elicitation. It's about capturing them, and well, sometimes we call captured requirements, we call them specifications. Just another word, well, how do you call it? It's semantics and syntactics, but never mind. Specifications, in my opinion, captures requirements put on paper. And there are two main streams of documenting requirements. The first one is natural language, just writing something down, just sentences, maybe disguised as user stories or whatever, but just writing it down in plain, in your case Russian or English or Dutch or whatever. And the other one is models, using models. And UML, for instance, is a useful way of documenting. Use case diagrams, activity diagrams, the Jordan and DeMarco diagrams, etc. It's not UML, but there are different kinds of ways of documenting your requirements. For instance, requirements about data can be documented in entity relation diagrams or in class diagrams, etc. And the next step after you've documented them is to validate them, to check them for quality criteria. And there are quite a lot of quality criteria that you could apply to requirements. For instance, looking to the content, what's in it, what's really in it, what does it mean? But next to the content, you also could check the documentation. How is it documented? Usually you have some standards on how to document the requirements, and you could check, are these standards followed? And the last one, and certainly not the least one, is checking the agreement. Because if you have 10 different stakeholders, they will have 10 different opinions about the requirements. But you can only build one system. So you have to harmonize them. You have to bring them to an agreement on these requirements. And these are all things that you will have to do if you're a business analyst, of course, not if you're a tester, to validate the quality of the requirements. And you have to do it for the complete set of requirements as a whole, especially for consistency. And you have to look at the individual requirements. For the individual requirements, you look to the content, to the agreement, to the documentation. And for the complete set is very important for consistency, for instance. And then they'll have to be managed. Because you have a growing set of requirements and there are changes and there are things happening and some are outdated and deleted, etc. So you have to look at that. And one of the most important management techniques is prioritization. Not every requirement is needed that much. Maybe some are needed first and some are more important than others. And you have to have some view on that. The life cycle of requirements, there are changes in requirements, they are changed, they are deleted, they are updated and whatever, and you have to keep track of it, including version management. And the last and certainly not least thing for requirements management is traceability. For every requirement, you have to know where did it came from, in what sources did we find them, with what techniques did we uncover them, and where is it used. This requirement is used in this program, and in this module, and in this web interface, and is tested by these test cases, and these cases were executed, and we found these defects when executing. For instance, if you find a defect, in some way you must trace it back to the original requirement and go to the stakeholder that uttered that requirement and say, okay, sorry guy, but what you asked is not working at the moment. And on the other hand, if somebody who has expressed a requirement says, oh well, on second thought I like to change it a little bit, then you as a tester must know what new test cases you have to develop, or what test cases that you already executed, you must redo them or something. So traceability is a very important aspect of requirements management. And I showed you some processes of good requirements management, and in every step things can go wrong. So let's take a look at the bad guys. What can go wrong in these processes? First, in the elicitation, and we already talked a little bit about it. What can go wrong? We can forget sources. Sources can contradict each other, having different opinions about a certain requirement. And this is a new one, improper stakeholder management. Especially when stakeholders are people, are human. They have emotions, they have feelings about requirements, they have feelings about the project that you're working on. And if you don't get them engaged, get them involved, well, they might be, for instance, reluctant to tell you everything, or they might, they might not. Well, what you see as a tester, they might not show up at the acceptances just because you forgot to inform them about what you made of their requirements, etc. So, keeping a good relation with all the stakeholders that are relevant for the requirements is also an important task of the business analyst, and in an agile situation of you as a team. Of course, you as a tester, you also should have a good relation with your stakeholders because you're interacting with them. Well, techniques can go wrong. You can choose not the right technique, for instance. If you do questionnaires on a very small group of stakeholders, it's a waste of time doing it. You could go there and ask them questions. And if you try to do it with a huge group of stakeholders, well, you won't have enough time to do it, and you'll forget some, or you'll be able to make the right appointments in the time that you're able to do the interviews. So selecting the right technique is important, and applying the right technique in the right way is important. So there, things can go wrong. And the problem with things going wrong in elicitation, they are the worst. They tend to become ugly. These are things that are, at the end, lead to something that's documented in an improper way, and you as a tester will have a very hard time to detect them. So this is the first one that we should be keen on. Next step is documentation. Well, we talked about this. Things could not be smart, for instance. Performance should be good. Okay, what is good? That's a simple thing. They could be messy and vague and contradictory. This is also important. Well, not everybody agrees with me, but I like to tell you about it. I like to see requirements split in atomic parts. In one sentence, only one requirement. Because then it's testable. If you have a requirement that says, well, the system must produce a package list containing every item in the warehouse that is below the minimum level, and it must be readable in this light condition, and etc., etc. Then if you test it, and if one thing out of this whole sentence fails, well, did the test pass or fail? Failed on some parts, it passed on other parts. I like to split up your requirements in individual pieces that I could test and say yes or no. Well, it's checking, of course, and well, context-driven testers would say that I'm old-fashioned. Well, but still, it helps you if your requirements are really defined in very small atomic portions. If you have model-based documentation, well, you could have chosen not the proper models. For instance, using an activity diagram to show state transitions, or using entity relation diagrams while you need the information that should be present in the class diagram, or etc. And you could do wrong things about drawing techniques, etc. In fact, these are defects in the requirements. Oh, well, by the way, on the overall level of the requirements, there are the inconsistencies, of course. But these are things that you, as a tester, can detect. These are things that are tangible. So they're bad, but you can capture them. Same is for validation. Bad validation means that, well, bad requirements can escape to the next phase in your project. And, well, they're still bad, but if they're ugly, you won't find them, and if they're bad, you can capture them. So, for bad validation, as a tester, you could look for proof. See if there's some documentation about reviews that have been done, or approvals that have been given. Who did it? When was it done? How was it checked? What was checked? So, as a tester, you could look for proof that validation has been carried out in a proper way. And if you find out there was a bad validation, do it yourself. You're a tester. You can, at least these documentation things, you can capture. And bad management is things like working with wrong versions. I had that once a few years ago. We were testing something and we found quite a lot of defects. Much more than usually. And then we went to the analyst and said, well, we find these lots of defects. Yeah, but what version of your functional design are you working on? We're working on 0.3. Oh, but we are already on 0.7. Why didn't you tell us? Oh, forgot, sorry. Happens. It's, well, all the other things also, it's mainly producing waste. It wastes your time and money. It doesn't, it might not cause real problems, but you could be confused in it. It will lead to frustration, etc., and delays. So if it happens, bad requirements management, well, get angry to the project manager or something and make sure it's changed. So now we have come to the point where You, as a tester, receive input to prepare your tests, and this input is requirement. And you know there can be something wrong in it. Maybe in the past you always trusted your analysts, etc., and trusted your input. Now I've convinced you that there could be something wrong in it. Sorry for that, but it's reality. So you have to do something about it. You have to get them. You have to catch them before they do harm. Because be sure it's not the Bible that you input for you. There are defects in your input. And if you are able to catch these defects before you actually start testing with it, it's much cheaper and it makes your work much easier. So what do we do about bad elicitation? And remember, this bad elicitation is the worst part because they usually lead to ugly requirements that if you don't detect them, you'll find them in production or late in acceptance testing. It might be about forgotten or contradictory sources or a wrong application of techniques or inconsistencies, etc., and basic factors that are overlooked, etc. You don't have too much weapons in there. The most important weapon is domain knowledge. And, well, that's not easy. Talking with stakeholders can help you to improve your domain knowledge. And another thing that could, in a way, substitute domain knowledge is checklists. Just lists that are growing in your company for common questions that you should ask about things that could be contradictory. It's very useful to prepare checklists by capturing things that went wrong in the past. If something went wrong in the past in this realm, you could add some questions to your checklist just to make sure that it won't happen to you again. Bad documentation, I told you, it's about validation of standards and norms and templates on how to get these requirements on paper or in the system or whatever. They are relatively easy. You can check. You should do a proper and thorough intake review of your input. And just take the standards and norms and templates and whatever and put them next to your input and say, okay, here you forgot to elaborate the why on this user story. So how could you think that I could test it? And here you have a vague statement about performance. How do you mean? This is not smart. I can't test it. So use it. Use checklists, use intake reviews, and use it thoroughly. Because every hour you spend there saves you 9 hours in testing later on. So your boss will be happy with you because you do more work in less time. Bad validation can be about escaping bad or ugly requirements. Don't bother. Do it yourself. There's nothing more than that. But of course, if you start doing your intake on your input and you see that there are things that are not good, well, double your effort in doing better reviews. Because if you find defect clustering, of course, you all know defect clustering. If you find one defect, there'll probably be more. So if you find one defect in your input, there will probably be more in it. And do more work on detecting them. Because every one that you catch before you start preparing your test cases is time and money saved. Bad management. That leads probably to frustration and waste of your time and money. Usually it doesn't really lead to bad and ugly requirements. It's only, for instance, working with wrong versions, yeah, well, it might be very confusing, but in the end you'll find out and you'll find the good requirements, and then you wasted a lot of time, and the boss won't be happy, but you can give the blame to the other guys. So your weapons: involvement, communication, reporting. Try to see what happens in your project and make sure it won't happen to you. Make sure you will repeatedly ask, did you change something? What's the version that we are working on? Talk to your developers. What did you meet? For instance, of course, your developers have the same problem because they have the same input. And if they found defects in their input, it's the same for you. So talk with your development colleagues. What did you find in these requirements, and how did you interpret them? Because many problems arise for different interpretation of the same requirement. Just ask them. Ask to the business analyst, what did you mean? Ask to the developer, how did you interpret it? Then say, how do I interpret it? And if it's not the same, you're sure that there's a problem in the system. So involvement, communication, etc. is your best weapon for bad management. And you have a tool for it. This is my multi-tool for everything that's related to requirements. The given, when, then. Who knows given, when, then? Okay, good. Good. Use it. Let's have an example of a requirement. It's about an online bookstore. As soon as a purchase is made, the system shall print an invoice at the warehouse printer where all the items present in the shopping with all the items present in the shopping cart. Understandable requirement, isn't it? It contains bad and ugly. For instance, we have here functionality and quality mixed. Functionality is print an invoice. Quality is as soon as it's processed or printed at the warehouse printer. So it's not atomic. And well, you'll need different test cases to find it. What exactly is a purchase and when is it made? Is it when we enter the OK button, or is it made when the money is received, or is it made when the confirmation email is acknowledged or whatever? Sure. How soon as soon as the purchase is made? Is it within 1 minute? Is it within 1 hour? Is it within 1 day? No. Why do we print an invoice at a warehouse? Do you mean a packing list or something? Or should we print both and then add them together in a package? Don't know. Is there only one printer at the warehouse printer? No? And how about e-books? They are not in the warehouse, I think. So what would we do with that? And then for me, I say, given requirements, when in doubt, then apply given, when, then. So for instance, here we have some given, when, thens. Given the shopping cart contains books and the purchase itself has been acknowledged, then when the amount due is received, the money is in, then a packing list is printed at the work order printer or the warehouse within 1 minute. Might be a better formulation of the requirement. And given the shopping cart contains e-books and the purchase has been acknowledged, when the amount due is received, then an email is sent to the customer with links to the e-books within 1 minute. Completely different story. Given the purchase contains books, containing books has it been acknowledged, when the package with these books has been shipped, then an email is sent to the customer with the invoice of all the e-books within 1 hour, for instance. Here are the e-books. E-books only purchase. When the link has been sent, then an email is sent with the invoice within 1 minute. So now we had a requirement that at first sight looks very normal, but when we start analyzing this, and this is what you can do as a tester, when you start analyzing it, when you feel that something is not really to translate it in this given when then template, and you'll find out many other refinements, many other details that need proper testing. Because the nice thing about given when then is that you can convert this one-to-one to test cases. It's something that you already need in preparing your test cases. So it helps you enormously to transform bad requirements into good requirements. So I get you to work again. I still have 2 tins of cookies, not for the ones that gained it already. So go ahead. What do you do when you find bad requirements? Just discuss with each other. Why is it a problem, and who are involved, and what will you do when you detect you're doing an intake? You have this functional design or architectural plan or whatever, and you start looking at it and you say, hey, this is strange. What do we do? Just take still 9 minutes to discuss this. And once again, for the winners, we have Dutch cookies. And by the way, there's no real solution of it, but afterwards I'll give you my view on it. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm really afraid, sorry. I really like your discussion. Excellent, well done, applause to you. But I guess I did a little error in the planning, so we're running out of time. So yeah, well, we still have, for my clock we still have time, but for the rest of the conference we don't have. So very quick answers for 2 other groups. Yes, ladies, I'll come with the microphone to you.
Мне только с переводом можно помочь, я по-русски. У нас на проекте в последнее время часто возникает проблема, когда в задаче слишком много требований, и продукт-оунер зачастую сам не понимает, что от него хочет бизнес, заказчик, поэтому в задаче он пишет вообще все, что может совершать тот или иной функционал приложения. Мы нашли решение непосредственно в обход ответственного за данную задачу обращаться сразу к его непосредственному руководителю, потому что на вопросы непосредственно ответственный по задаче не отвечает, потому что он сам не понимает. И решение нашлось в том, чтобы декомпозировать задачу, какой-то там новый функционал на несколько маленьких стеков. То есть только таким образом мы смогли решить проблему, когда требований слишком много.
Excellent, thank you very much. Making things smaller is always a good way to manage. And well, the last small thing is for the other group. Who wants? Okay. Oh.
К сожалению, тоже будет русский. К счастью, ладно. Мы периодически сталкиваемся с тем, что мы реализуем какие-то фичи, мы делаем игры, да, мы играем на работе. Вот, и когда наши геймдизайнеры, это, я так понимаю, аналог бизнес-аналитиков у нас, они делают какие-то фичи, они часто думают как-то что это можно сделать быстро, и они думают, что все очень четко прописано, все продумано. И иногда выдаются какие-то такие замечательные ситуации, когда у нас сити-билдер, мы строим город, и есть домики, и люди ставят эти домики. Решили сделать очень крутую штуку, и на те домики, которые у людей уже есть, Хэллоуин, красивые черепа, всякие там, сделали так называемые скины. Скины — это не домики. Скины ставятся на домик, это не другой домик. И, собственно, как бы слегка было прописано, не очень много времени дано разработку, тестирования тоже. И когда начинаешь тестировать, к сожалению, мы уже получили в тест до того, как документы посмотрели, и всплывают такие вопросы. До этого тоже были скины на один домик. А теперь мы делаем скин, а домиков таких может быть много. И вот уже возникает вопрос. Опять же, в чем проблема? В том, что мы думаем, что мы знаем, как это реализовать, и еще мы думаем, что программист, возможно, задаст вопрос, если он в чем-то сомневается. Это не всегда так, хотя бывает. Вот. И, например, просто ты сразу при тестировании сталкиваешься с тем, что пользователь получает домик, ставит, окрашиваются все домики. И тот механизм, когда нужно, чтобы пользователь выбирал, какой именно домик, соответственно, его нужно научить этому, то есть еще должен быть обучающий момент, они изначально не продуманы. И получается, кто страдает? Мы очень страдаем. Страдают, получается, программисты, которые сделали так, как они думают, что они сделали. Приходят злые тестировщики, тестируют, оказывается, все не так. Страдают наши продюсеры, потому что они уже запустили акцию, получают денежки, а нет, мы еще не доделали. Вот. И в конечном итоге страдают пользователи, потому что так как мы, конечно, постарались сделать как можно лучше, но уже на обучение, например, не так много времени осталось продумать, и они бедненькие смотрят, что и как. Вот. То есть, и когда нам говорят, вот эта фича, она быстрая, вы ее там за 2 часа протестируете, в итоге это растягивается иногда на неделю, потому что нет продумано, больше нужно программировать, больше тестировать.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I really like your discussions, and I really think this work? Yes. Okay, now let's finish then. In my opinion, if you have found a defect in your input on requirements. I have two. Oh, how strange. Let's put this away then. If you found defects in your requirements, you have 3 principal approaches on what to do next. First one is, it's a defect. It's just a defect. Like all your other defects that you find in test execution. And treat it as a defect. Put it on your incident management system. Send it to the right party that has to repair it, and then wait until it comes back. And then, well, you have to retest it. In this time, you have to review it. But that's not always possible, because time constraints, etc. Maybe these analysts that developed it are long gone already, or they have other things to do, or whatever. Next step could be, treat it as a risk. Don't test it, but just report it. Well, this is something that we found in our input that is impossible or incorrect, or etc. So no use testing it, but dear customer, well, we didn't test it. There's something contradictory in it. Good luck with it and tell me what you want. I think that's also a good way to work, but you won't get very popular with it. They won't like you for that. So, this is the best way, I think, but this is the usual way. Treat it as an opportunity. Use this given when then to refine and redefine these requirements, and then start testing with your redefined requirements. Don't forget to inform your customer. And don't forget to discuss it with the developers and with the business analyst. But you're at the last part of the project, and well, maybe there won't be time to do it a different way. And you know a lot of the system, and you already, through testing, gained a lot of domain knowledge and system knowledge. And maybe you're the best one to give this last push to the requirements to make them good requirements. And capture them and feed them back, and everybody's happy. And now time is up. Well, are my slides up? Yes, my slides are up too. Oh, wonderful. So my message. You are testers. And testers are very important for the quality of the systems that are in production. And you can handle bad requirements. I gave you some ways to look at it, and good luck with it, and do your good work, and make sure our clients get value from our work. Thank you very much.
Our rules and ask people to ask you some questions.
Yeah, we don't. Do we have time for questions? Well, I have to just give this one, huh? One. Okay. Well, I'll give this to what group didn't have the time to give the last. You had also want to win. Yeah, you also wanted to win the Dutch cakes, so instead you get this one.
И у нас последний вопрос.
Thank you for the very nice and interesting report. It's been a pleasure, and your presentation is very, very nice. I love it very much. I have a small and a big question. The question is that all this attitude, as I get it, it needs time. It needs time to formulate, to make research, to correct, to get answers, and all that. And what can we as a testers do when we have no time, when we are short of time?
We are always short of time.
Yes, of course. That's the problem.
But first, start with the conviction that you are capable of doing it. Just don't be shy and say, "Oh, this business analyst has written this down. He will be right." Just be on equal level with everybody in the team, and be persuaded that you have a vital place in the quality assurance in your project, and help them. Don't see it as discarding them or something. No, help them with your knowledge to get the requirements at a higher level. Because if you start a project with bad requirements, it will be a bad system. And you can help them improve it. Why, for instance, give him one then? Good luck with it. It takes time. But be sure that you can do it.
Увидимся через 5 минут на закрытии конференции.
Thank you very much.